beat him. And now he is with the ancestors. We've had so many of these stories of police brutality. I come from a family of police officers. I know that there are good police officers, and most of them are. But we have to admit that there's something about the culture of policing, at least today. Maybe it's always been around. But something about the culture of policing today that turns young men and women who become police officers, not all, but some of them, that turns them into brutes. And they use the power that they have given to them by the state to inflict pain and harm and death on other people. This is a deeper problem about American culture and American violence. It is a common denominator that runs throughout many of our institutions, and there are different forms of violence. And we associate often violence with physical force and physical harm and death. But there are all kinds of violences. And when they coalesce into an ideology of inferiority, that you're not equal because of the color of your skin, because of your gender, because of your sexual orientation, because you have a record. Whatever the thing is that causes someone to single that out and then use their power to abuse you, or even to lead to your death, that is evil. It's not mental health, that's evil. And we have to recognize, I think, how this is perpetuated throughout American culture, violence in a lot of different forms. And so, at this moment of our pastoral prayer, as those of you who wish to come forward for prayer, I invite you. If you don't want to stay in the circle, that's okay too. But what I'm asking you to do is, as you come forward, please look into this camera and offer some word to the Nichols family, particularly Tyree Nichols' mother. It could be just from your heart. It could be, well, it's from your heart, so I can't, whatever your heart leads you to say, I want you to come and say it, and then we'll have a prayer together. And so, please, as our musician ushers us in music, please come forward. Say something to Miss Nichols and her family, to Tyree's father, his children. Gracious Father, so often we sing, don't be discouraged with trouble in your way. He'll bear your burdens and move all misery and strife. That's why we say we've come this far by faith. But we recognize, oh God, there are times in life when it feels like faith is not enough. But yet we know that it is. But it just feels limited. And so as we, your people, gather today, we remember the family of Tyree Nichols and him, and so many others before him who have died at the hands of brutality, racism. Have mercy upon us, O God. Have mercy upon your human creations. Help us to learn that we learn to hate and that we can learn also to love. Lest we become weary and give up because of so much that happens to us personally and in our world that burdens our hearts. Remind us that you are with us always and all the way. And that somehow, some way, by your mercy and kindness and by your unlimited power, truth to the earth will rise again. That the moral arc of the universe does bend towards justice. And so, O God, help us to continue to hold on by faith, so that we may be able to live the best we can each day that we have, to be grateful for those moments. Through Jesus Christ our Lord we pray. Amen. So as you move into this coming week and hear more about the unfolding case of Mr. Tyree Nichols, and as it reminds us of so many others who have died at the hands of police brutality and in other ways, domestic violence, sexual violence and abuse, be mindful of your own need. This is what the idea is called vicarious suffering. Vicarious suffering means that when you hear the stories of other people's suffering, it's possible to take in those stories in such a way that you can begin to reflect some of the symptoms of the person who is suffering. Because sometimes the mind has a challenge to separate somebody else's story from your own story. And it can impact your body, your spirit, your mind. That's vicarious suffering. You vicariously take in the suffering story of someone else. Compassion fatigue is when you give out so much of yourself that you just become depleted, exhausted, emotionally, physically. So compassion fatigue is when you give out a whole lot, and vicarious suffering is when you take in too much. And the key to dealing with those is self-care. You need to do whatever you need to do to rest, to eat properly, to get exercise to the extent you're able, to be exposed to the outside for a little bit, get sunshine, air, turn off the television. Whatever it is you need to do to quiet yourself down and to gain some other perspective, please please take care of yourself. Don't, whatever the list is, there's no one way, you know. But the way not to is to do anything that leads to you harming yourself. Taking care of yourself doesn't mean getting drunk. So you may want a cocktail at the end of the day, but you understand what I'm saying. You go in extreme, that could be harmful to yourself. That's not self-care. But take the time, talk to someone if you feel really heavily burdened. Talk to a family member, friend. I'd be happy to listen as well. Any of our deacons, talk to someone, family, friends, your physician, whomever. Reach out. Don't hold it all in, because these things that we see happening in our world, particularly like the case of Mr. Nichols, it can be triggered. It can trigger memories that you may have had about being abused or harmed, or someone whom you know and love, and it can come out of nowhere. You thought you'd taken care of that, and boom, it comes right back. And you find yourself irritated, and anxious, angry, eating too much, not eating enough, sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, and you can't figure out where is this coming from. I'm agitated, I'm upset, but I don't know where it's coming from. You realize, thinking about it, something is triggered, like the incident with Mr. Nichols. So, please, take care of yourself. Take your medicine if you don't want medicine. You need to change it. Talk to your doctor. So many people forget to take their medicine. How many of y'all have blood pressure medicine? Somebody said, what did you do to get off of it?
Just exactly what you said.
You took care of yourself. So everybody's got different stuff, right? Now, how many of y'all forgot to take your high blood pressure medicine for the day? You don't have to confess it. Well, maybe sometime, Mr. Rock, we might do a thing on mental health and physical health, and self-care and medicine, how people have dealt with issues. There's a lot of new information out there that we can all share and benefit from. Just like Sister Patty said, she used to have high blood pressure. That's a nice thing to be able to say. I used to have it. So how do you get rid of it? You know, maybe there's something that you know that we all can learn from. So you get the idea. Let's take care of ourselves, and to the extent that we can, let us help one another. God bless.
morning, church family. The next responsive reading is on the handout, and it was made in collaboration effort with Bible study. So I will be reading the version of the Bible study created, and you guys will be reading the version of the Beatitudes from the Bible.
Oh, it's the opposite, actually.
Okay. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Bless us all in our community. Bless us our shelter. Bless our families who are struggling with hunger and lack of water, for they shall be fed.
Blessed are the mourning, for they will be comforted.
Blessed are those in California who are throughout the nation who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are those who cry, for their tears shall be wiped away.
Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth.
Blessed are the pure, for they will be comforted.
Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled.
Blessed are those who search for the word of God, for it shall be spoken.
Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy.
Blessed are the lonely, for they will find comfort. Blessed are those who open their hearts to receive God's blessings.
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will receive God.
Blessed are the children who are not touched by the evils of this world, for they shall see God.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
Blessed are the ones who give love, for they shall be shown love.
Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Blessed are the truth desires, that have see the light.
Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account.
Blessed are members of the LGBTQ+ community, they shall find freedom.
Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Blessed are those who stay strong in their faith, in their prayers, for they will enter the kingdom of God. Thanks be to God.
I don't do it as much now as I used to do and do it in my younger years, but sometimes I would sit down and think, what would it be like to just be a downright scoundrel? I mean, to have the only motivation is to do what was pleasing and getting whatever I wanted to get. What would it be like to just not care about what other people thought about your behavior, or that has a different dimension to it, but just be down and out, self-centered, and do whatever I wanted to do, and then on my deathbed, the last few breaths said, Lord, forgive me. I know this may sound strange to some of you, but would I make a good thief? Could I rip people off and sleep well at night? Could I just cuss somebody out and just make it sound poetic? Could I just live my life in such a way, and this word is in the Bible, so I hope I'm not going to throw anybody off. Could I live my life in such a way where I just don't give a damn? Now somebody just said some people can. I was speaking at a church once, and I used the lyrics from the Temptations, Papa was a Rolling Stone. And I mentioned the lyrics, and some people mouthed them, and I said, oh, you church folks know that song. And the lady in the back yelled out, I knew Papa. What we have here in this wonderful, reflective rendition of the Sermon on the Mount from our Bible study is that reflective statement that some people attribute to one of the greatest ethical statements ever stated or written. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, if you will. And if you notice the categories that the Beatitudes refer to, it seems like that Jesus was aware that those who were listening to him were struggling with their way of trying to be, quote unquote, decent and right in the world. Have you ever had that struggle? When you live in a world where it seems like some people can just do whatever they want to do without impunity, without a sense of conscience, that when we live in a world where sometimes people look at us, those who are trying to, quote, do the right thing and live the right way, some people even laugh at us. Hold us in contempt, all you all in the church folks, or where you might be, being Mr. and Mrs. Goody Two-Shoes or whatever. And the other extreme, there are people within the religious faith communities who think that they are just one feather shy of being perfect, holier than thou, and they go around judging everybody else as not being as good as they are. So you can be on both extremes. But it seems like Jesus was trying to say something to the community that he knew that they were struggling. They were people who were, like him, poor. There were people who had and were experiencing losses. There were people who tried to interact with the world and with other people in a very humble way. There were people who were indeed hungry, physically hungry, and there were people who were spiritually hungry for the truth. There were people who were struggling with how to show compassion. There were people whose compassion was taken advantage of. There were people who, out of the honesty of their heart trying to see God, if you will. We're talking about ridicule, scorn, made fun of. There were people who were trying to keep the peace in their families, in their communities, in their relationship with the civil government, with the Roman authorities. He knew what they were struggling with. I was walking down a dirt road in a small village in Colombia, South America. We had gone there to do a human rights investigation about the influence of the cartel and for helping the UCC church to think about its policy towards Plan Colombia, as it was called at the time. This man came out and in an animated way, he asked us to come forward. He come to him. He wanted us to see him and his family. And so the group of us went into this small little hut made of straw and aluminum. It was divided into two sections. The front section was like the kitchen and living room and bedroom, and this back section, separated by a curtain, was the bathroom, and the bathroom was a hole in the ground. And he talked to us about his life as living under these conditions. And he had two little girls, his daughters, about 7 and 9, beautiful little children. And as you know, when company comes, children get really excited. They look up at you behind the mother's skirt. They were always peeking out at us. And I reached in my pocket and I had a package of gum. And I gave it to one of the oldest of the two girls. They laughed and they ran out. And after our conversation with the parents, we came back out, and there were these two little girls with about 20 other children sitting in a circle. And they were passing the package of gum around the circle. And each was taking a little piece. And I stood there watching the oldest child, and the last piece came to her. She looked up at me and offered it back to me. Blessed are the pure. People who live with a sense of humility, meekness. No, I'm not telling you that story to glorify poverty by no means. But it has been my experience that some of the most downtrodden, some of the people with the least to give are often the most giving, are often the most loving. I remember being so upset at times when I would do home visits as a young social worker in very difficult neighborhoods, early days in Bridgeport. And people would say, oh, those folks who live over in that housing project, they're this, that, the other. There was always somebody who was a knucklehead, no matter where you live. But when I would go into the homes of people who invited me in for the work that I was doing, what I saw was order, cleanliness, beauty, flowers, arts and crafts, a whole world that the stereotypical view does not see. And maybe in a way, Jesus has some sense of how these people were really living and how they were really being. And he wanted to say something to them about the ethics of their life and how powerful the values out of which they lived were. And so he says to them, blessed are the poor in spirit, for they reflect the community of God. Blessed are you who mourn. Yeah, life is hard and you lose, but you will be comforted. You're blessed because you have a humble attitude toward people and living in life. Blessed are the meek, for you shall inherit the gift of the earth, what the earth has to show and reveal. I know some of you are very hungry. And hunger is a problem. And I know some of you want to get at the deepest understanding of the truth about what it means to follow God. You will be satisfied. Blessed are you who are merciful. I see you. I see you showing compassion. I see you feeding others. I see you binding up the wounds of other people. I see you helping strangers. I see you helping people who don't even say thanks. Blessed are you. Because you have a pure heart and a merciful spirit. I've noticed some of you who try to quell arguments and fights, try to keep the peace in this community. Blessed are you. For the bottom line to this larger ethical value view of the world and how we are to be in this world is this. If you change your mind, you change your heart. And if you change your heart, you change your life. And he didn't want these people who heard him to think that the life that they were living, the ethics by which they were guiding their behavior, was in vain. And one could say, yeah, but look where it got him. Where did he even get Jesus? Was he not pure in spirit? Did he not mourn? Was he not weak? Did he not hunger for righteousness? Was he not merciful? Was he not pure in heart? Was he not a peacemaker? Was he... What happened to him? Persecuted. Died a criminal's death on the cross. The issue is not what will happen to us if we don't live by a certain set of values. The question is, what will happen to us if we do? What kind of people can we become? Affirm. How we can lay down, put our heads on our pillow at night knowing that we've done the best that we could do with the day that we were given. No, we're not perfect, but somehow these values by which we live are eternal values, and the only ones by which life has a chance of flourishing and thriving. So though he died because of these kinds of values by which he lived, that death was symbolic of the full commitment he had to these values. Nobody wants to die a cruel death. Nobody wants to die before their time. But the question isn't how we die per se, or when, how we live. And this is what Jesus was trying to say. And so I came to church this morning thinking about the coincidence of these Beatitudes and the recent story about Mr. Nichols. And I heard his mother, perhaps you did too. She said something very interesting. She said something to the effect that maybe this is how God used her son's life for a greater good. And we've heard this other people who walked through. And when I heard that, I said, okay, what does it mean to follow a God whom you believe has somehow led your son to give up his life the way the time he gave him his? What kind of God is that? And then she said, you all may not agree with this, but this is how I see it. And this is the faith that I'm going to hold on to. Change your mind, change your heart, you change your life. That's what makes it blessed. We delight in the blessing of being able to gather and your being here. Please know that if you are looking for a church home, we're delighted to talk to you about that. And if you know of someone, please encourage them to come and to worship with us. God bless you all. Remember to take care of yourselves and